The Mountain Regiment, after overcoming weak frontier units, advances at dawn in open order and reaches the first objective without any more fighting. Loosely formed to avoid unnecessary losses. An anti-tank ditch is crossed. The regimental commander gives the adjutant orders for the further advance and reconnaissance objectives. The order is radioed to the battalion. Orders for reconnaissance from the battalion commander. The reinforced scout troop is assigned to see whether the village before the regiment, Scheinsee, is enemy occupied. Some enemy snipers open fire. A clearing is stormed. The enemy is spotted, trench digging. Our covering weapons open fire. The enemy abandons the position. On the other side of the village, civilians are questioned. They say weak enemy forces have withdrawn, but the village of Garavense is held in strength. They also saw artillery. The scout troop's mission is fulfilled. The scout troop leader reports the findings. They are immediately radioed to the regiment. The battalion commanders discuss the reconnaissance results and the further attack. Regimental orders for the advance and attack preparations against Garavense reach the battalion. The battalion order. Part of the artillery and heavy weapons watch over the advance. Skillfully exploiting terrain, the battalions approach the assembly area. Narrow, deep lines. Exploiting every cover. An anti-tank gun covers a vulnerable sector from enemy tanks and armored scout cars. The assembly area is reached. Dig in. Abandoned Russian positions serve as cover. The assembly area is covered by heavy weapons. Heavy infantry guns and artillery go into position. Zeroing in. A forward enemy position, camouflaged in a wheat field, is the target of the infantry guns. The fire for effect against Garavense has begun. Mountain artillery. The enemy replies with large caliber guns. The shots fall short. battery that covered the move to the assembly area is hauled into position. Light field howitzers. Heavy field howitzers. The general gives the artillery commander instructions for the next mission of the artillery. The effect of the artillery fire. On the enemy side. The attack begins. Thick, marshy underbrush causes a dangerous massing here. All officers must take energetic action. Advance in wide, deeply echeloned form. A second anti-tank ditch is crossed. Russian heavy tanks attack in the flank. Tank alarm. It should be passed on through all our communications. Anti-tank units in readiness are concentrated on the threatened flank. Under the combined fire from artillery and anti-tank guns, 3 heavy tanks break down. The crews fight on. A 5-centimeter gun shoots at the turret ring. The crew knows exactly the T-34's vulnerable parts. Hit. Knocked out. Switch targets. Ricochet. Try aiming at a perpendicular angle. From the side or in the back, the enemy tank is most vulnerable. An alert sergeant jams a charge in the barrel and jumps under cover. The wounded crew gives up. The tanks burn out. The battalions set off anew. Cables are set up. Artillery smoke shells prevent flanking fire of the enemy from the woods. The assembly area of the assault guns is next to the reserve battalion. Orders for action. Supported by infantry and engineers, they are to attack an identified enemy bunker in the flank and break through. Drive right through Russian blocking fire. Infantry and engineers dismount and spring through the firing zone during lulls. Don't stick with the assault guns since they draw fire. They must be constantly protected from enemy close attacks. The accompanying assault troops clear the area. Opening fire on the bunker. Covered by fire from the opposite side, the assault guns roll on toward the fortification. Ammunition is brought up. Direct hit. While fire from the assault guns pins down the bunker's loopholes, infantry and engineers work up to the enemy position with demolition charges and flamethrowers. The breakthrough succeeds. Resistance is broken. The position of a light infantry gun platoon. Issuing orders for the heavy weapons to support the further attack and concentrate fire on the breakthrough zone. A brief violent cloudburst eases the approach of the right furthermost battalion toward a widely projecting part of the town. Under heavy enemy artillery fire, a rifle battalion advances frontally on the town. Stukas are engaged against the enemy artillery and identified tank assembly areas. An anti-tank gun is brought up and positioned to support the attack on the village edge with high explosive rounds. Russian bombers attack the battery. The anti-aircraft MG opens fire from favorable range on a low-flying attack plane. It crashes in flames. A crew member. A Russian scout car, feeling its way along a road, is shot up. The effect of the artillery preparation. Exploiting the penetration through the bunkers, the reserve battalion deploys from the left toward the town, supported by assault guns. The infantry must protect the assault guns in brush and wooded terrain from snipers and close attacks. Since the Russian usually establishes his strongest defenses along roads, the battalion thrusts sideward through an orchard. Against snipers in trees, the light MG proves its worth. It can also rest on the shoulder of a rifleman. Working forward independently under covering fire from heavy weapons. The battalion commander instructs the company right in the front line. Here we are. Flares are especially important in street fighting. Infantry and assault guns push further into the town. Flat trajectory weapons are used along roads, clearings, and open spaces, or fired on the move. Against well-emplaced nests offering no field of fire for flat trajectory weapons, the company chief employs steep trajectory ones. Mortars support the advance at close range. Always prepared for enemy counterattacks. The Russian counter-thrust collapses in concentrated fire. An An infantry gun assigned to the forward company destroys an enemy pocket of resistance.
Ein feindliches Widerstandsnest.
Wounded are rescued under fire. The platoon leader has been killed. Countless weapons fire on the breakthrough point. Under their covering fire, the infantry push into the town. Heavy MG and mortar stick close to the foremost squad. Part of the town is cleared with hand grenades. The Russian devilishly lets the attacking elements push past, then opens fire by surprise from houses and gardens. That's the German soldier. On both sides of the street, protecting the assault gun's flanks, a company pushes through to the opposite side of the town. Houses and gardens are cleared of the enemy. The town is taken. The battalions reform. Aerial markers identify the front line. Securing the town and deeper reconnaissance is ordered. The commander personally makes sure his orders are carried out. The division immediately pursues the retreating enemy with strong motorized elements. The companies take a break. The divisional commander personally commends his division for the day's success.
Erfolg des Tages aus.
The German soldier in the Eastern Campaign has accomplished phenomenal marches. Good drill and discipline were the prerequisites. Every officer, NCO, and man is responsible for maintaining march discipline. March on the left side of the road. The battalion commander should order this. Individual load bearing and the way weapons are carried must be uniform. Distribute more energetic rankers.
Einteilen.
The MG muzzle should face back.
Nach hinten.
Push details should also march in flawless order.
Marschieren.
This way is unmilitary and tires the soldiers. This is better. It's the same for motorized columns.
Kolonnen.
Right side of the road, uniform interval. Don't close up. Vehicles falling behind shouldn't race to catch up. Regain contact at a gradual, even tempo.
Anschluss gewinnen.
Because they're slower, assault guns belong at greater column intervals, neither with the infantry nor with motorized columns.
Motorisierten Kolonnen.
Rest areas must provide the opportunity for horses to drink. Post traffic control sentries on the road. Drivers use rest periods for vehicle maintenance.
Setzen seines Kraftfahrzeuges auszunutzen.
Then the well-deserved rest. Assemble the rifle squads off the road. Keep the road open. Such concentrations must be avoided in case of airstrikes. The officers are responsible. Here, air defense has been forgotten, with no heed given to camouflage. This could all be done under air cover. After rest, form up together. No disorderly running after. The energetic officer is lacking here. This standstill invites enemy aircraft. Direct traffic at such places. Hold waiting columns well back. March through precisely as ordered. Part of the column takes an easier shortcut. This disrupts traffic.
Verkehrsstörung.
It's the same with the motorized column.
Kolonnen.
The loss of time from this backup could decide the next battle.
Für das spätere Gefecht sein.
Here it's unsafe to pass. An accident is narrowly avoided. This column isn't keeping to the right.
Seite ein.
This column is well led and disciplined.
Diszipliniert.
When passing, hold up oncoming traffic. The driver must constantly check the horse's harness.
Das Geschirr der Pferde in Ordnung ist.
Watch the horse's gait.
Nachzusehen.
Frequently check the vehicle's maneuverability. Grease the axles often.
Wagenachsen nötig.
This column maintains good intervals and orderliness. Sick marchers may ride only with their officer's permission. Sitting on field kitchens is forbidden.
Küchen ist verboten.
Here, the load bearing and carrying of weapons is not uniform.
Weise der Waffen ungleichmäßig.
This activity belongs after the march. Fatigue is no reason for slackening march discipline. The day's objective is reached. Don't let stopping columns stand on the road. Keep the road open. Even far from the enemy, digging in spares blood. Aircraft like to attack shelters and bivouacs. Order sentries posted, whether wanted or not.
Werden darf, ist zu befehlen.
Avoid positions on stone walls because of fragmentation. Here, the foxholes are too close. Good. Boil water before drinking.
Vor dem Gebrauch
A handkerchief serves as a filter.
dient als Filter.
Watching for the enemy is always necessary. Clean weapons and maintain uniforms, equipment, and vehicles, even after strenuous activity.
Auch nach größeren Marschanstrengungen nicht unterlassen werden.
Here, observation is remembered, but camouflage weapons and equipment keep separate from the troops being protected.
Truppe.
Even when tired, the troops must construct bivouacs.
Angehalten werden.
Tents are warmer than just wrapping up in the ground sheet.
Zeltbahn.
Collect straw. Keep weapons near at hand.
Nur dann
Only then will the troops be fully refreshed in the morning.
Kräften sein.
The Russian is a master of fortifying terrain and building positions. The better we know his principles, the more easily we can attack his positions. The position is to the right in the picture, with its front to the left. It's reinforced against riflemen and armor by different obstacles. Against infantry, a trench running through marshy terrain has been built and reinforced by wire entanglements. Behind the infantry obstacle is an anti-tank ditch. A mound of earth faces the enemy. It therefore makes the trench more visible over ground and impedes the position's field of fire. Running the anti-tank ditch along the wooded hillside works well. This camouflages it. It is reinforced with a crossed steel barrier. In less firm earth, the side of the anti-tank ditch is bolstered with wickerwork. An unfinished anti-tank ditch. Although it's much too narrow, a retreating Russian tank is hung up on its slope. Here, German armor was to be stopped by so-called bath ditches. The tank's tracks are supposed to fall into the narrow, vertical, and flooded slots, while its bottom plate gets hung up on the level ground between the gaps. The layout of the bath ditch is easily recognizable. A wire obstacle in a water trench cannot be spotted from afar, and it cannot be crawled under. It can be more easily bridged with planks. Armor can't plow it under easily. This section of wire isn't very sturdy, since it lacks struts. Because it is too narrow, this anti-tank ditch is not an absolute obstacle for the Panzer III and IV. The crossed steel barrier is also supposed to block infantry, but too little wire is built in. Had this barrier been sited with a deeper field of fire, it would have been more defensible. This tank obstacle is very good. The gun embrasure is deep, quite large, and fitted with an armored shutter. It's pulled open and visible. The gun is to fire at targets directly in its sights. All combat installations follow the ridge. This way, it's easy to rake it with fire. The position lacks depth. Beyond the concrete structures, the position is fortified with earthworks of timber and soil. Here are flamethrowers with remote ignitions. Despite the well-designed trench system, with narrow, treacherous ditches, the effect of the German assault weapons was devastating. Weapons, men, and equipment are destroyed. The Russians should have spiked this anti-aircraft gun when retreating. This wire obstacle is not very sturdy because it lacks struts. It's more effective when several wire barriers are echeloned in depth. This tank obstacle in flooded terrain is well arranged. An anti-tank ditch, reinforced by 2 rows of diverse length, 20-centimeter thick stakes, is effective. A wide, deep anti-tank ditch like this one is a serious obstacle for our armor, especially when it's covered by defensive fire. All the defender's weapons should be able to sweep barriers of this type, since the obstacle is supposed to halt the enemy so that he can be destroyed. The enemy's weapons are mounted in a wooden bunker. They can be destroyed by direct hits by our heavy weapons or by assault troops. Wooden and earth bunkers in overgrown or wooded terrain are well camouflaged. Now and then we find them reinforced with concrete. This concrete bunker lacks camouflage and has an open embrasure without armored parapets. Wooden houses and barns often serve as camouflage for combat structures. They're usually not recognized until they open fire. Wooden bunkers burn out more easily than those made from earth or concrete. When they're made from fresh-cut timber, they're more solid and tougher than those made of dry wood.
Da solches Holz zäher und biegungsfester ist als ausgetrocknetes.
Even such strongly built positions can be taken when all weapons work together to destroy the enemy.
Vernichtung des Feindes zusammenwirken.
The German soldier has proven that he can overcome every obstacle. Our reconnaissance reveals that the forest's edge is enemy occupied. Scouts bring in prisoners who provide important details. Officers are issued orders at the battalion command post. The order is attack through the forest and take the village behind it.
Und die dahinterliegende Ortschaft Pogost zu nehmen.
After an arduous advance and short but well-spent rest, the company prepares to move out.
Fertig zum Antreten.
A quick cigarette. The first platoon moves out. The company chief with his runners. The platoons cross an open field, well fanned out. Infantrymen help pull an anti-tank gun to the front.
Nach vorn gebracht.
Sleeves must be rolled up uniformly, as ordered. This way is wrong. An FO follows the company. The FO is the artillery's forward observer, who advances with the lead infantry. The first part of the company is taking fire.
Auf Feuer gestoßen.
The open terrain is crossed at a run.
Wird im Laufschritt überwunden.
The FO has found a favorable spot, concealed from the enemy, and sets up his equipment. His job is to direct artillery fire onto strong points discovered during the fighting, and onto the enemy's heavy weapons, and to increase the range as we gain ground.
Das Feuer rasch vorzuverlegen.
Heavy mortars cover the advance. Flares call for artillery support.
Unterstützung angefordert.
When massing, use trenches for cover. Heavy mortars and light infantry guns join in the battle.
Greifen in den Kampf ein.
A heavy MG changes position.
Weise Stellungswechsel.
The FO relays firing coordinates to the artillery. The battery's tractors haul the guns forward. The first guns, ready to fire, knock out identified enemy targets.
Ziele nieder.
Feuer!
Under the concentrated fire of heavy infantry weapons and artillery, resistance is broken. The forest is broken through. Artillery increases the range. The advance continues under covering fire from the artillery toward the village of Progot.
Gegen die Ortschaft Progost.
Taken by storm. Wounded are brought back and receive first aid.
Erste Hilfe.
Prisoners are assembled and searched.
Und untersucht.
The officers are separated and interrogated.
Und verhört.
After sweeping the village, the troops, though tired, pursue the enemy.
Der Ermüdung am Feind und folgt ihm.
Building positions in winter increases the demand on troops. The cold reduces productivity. Ground frost further strains men and tools. Building this mortar position illustrates the increased toil in the winter. For every position, plan the construction early, being especially mindful of the spring-thaw. Arrange communication trenches, dugouts, and shelters with base frames. Provide for drainage and runoff ditches. Sentry posts should always be built for 2 men. This way, the sentries can cover one another while watching and warn of possible freezing. Straw is packed on the ground to conserve warmth. Where straw is lacking, moss, leaves, or pine limbs will work. Try to dig positions in trenches before the onset of winter, when the ground isn't frozen so hard yet. Positions are to be arranged just like in the warm season. Of course, take the enemy's disposition into account. All officers must consider that digging after the snowfall is visible at a much greater distance than in the warm season.
Bei Schnee aus sehr viel größerer Entfernung sichtbar sind als in der warmen Jahreszeit.
When the cold period begins, the deeper soil freezes only gradually. After laying out the position, it helps to dig through the frozen surface layer to the full depth in some places and then link these with tunnels beneath the frozen surface. The overhanging surface earth can be removed by punching holes or using explosives. Even during construction beyond the enemy's view, guard against the aerial threat through timely camouflage with snow or ground claws. Don't forget air and ground security. An explosion made hole is cleared out. Removal of the larger chunks usually goes faster by hand than with a shovel. For deeper digs, such as for tunnels and quarters, work can be done in 2 stages. When working in frozen ground, careful tool maintenance is important, especially sharpening pickaxes and iron bars. Against variable weather, like rain, snow, and drifting, trenches can be partially covered. Keep connecting trenches narrow. They will be less noticeable to ground and air observation, and also protect against shrapnel during barrages. Pay special attention to keeping weapons ready for action in winter. Weapons should remain outdoors to prevent damage from the change in temperature. Here there is no cover from wetness and snow. Dig niches in tunnels and trench walls to store weapons and ammunition. Snow is a good construction material for winter positions. If it's not possible to dig, snow bricks are fine for building walls and shelters. They protect against foul weather and shrapnel and are completely camouflaged. Mixing sand in each tier increases the sturdiness of the snow structures against the weather's penetration. Long walls made from snow bricks replace trenches. It's easier to move unseen than in communication trenches. Bringing up ammunition and food, evacuating the wounded, or as shown here, relieving troops can be carried out.
Ablösungen durchgeführt werden.
Here, a finished shelter is camouflaged. Use every opportunity to expand or improve positions and quarters. Larger supplies of wood are therefore important. Contrary to this picture, fit the stovepipe with a cupola to prevent the penetration of melting snow. These men toughen themselves by washing and scrubbing with snow. That's healthy. Even in winter, cleanliness comes first. In wooded areas, wood is nature's building material. The winter forest offers some camouflage from air and ground observation. Even by day, smoke always gives one away. Here, in unfavorable ground conditions, a tunnel entrance is reinforced with planks and secured by wire. A well-set log staircase. Don't make the steps too narrow, or else they'll break in the earth. Taking time to carefully think out and design quarters always pays off. This roof of logs and earth protects against shrapnel and can take direct hits from light-caliber guns. Picking the right spot for the latrine is important. For hygienic reasons, it's to be arranged as far as possible from inhabited quarters, so as not to impair a future expansion of the position. For tent bivouacs, choosing the spot is very important. The forest protects from warmth-robbing wind. It's also especially good camouflage from the air. Weak tree trunks should not be selected for tent poles. Fresh fallen snow is heavy, and its weight may cause the tent to collapse. Well-sharpened tent poles allow sufficiently deep boring into ground and make the tent sturdier. Here, such a tent is set up for 6 men. Notice that the overlapping part of the tent is turned from the wind side. Rain and melting snow also run off and not into the tent. Severe cold, especially ground cold, demands special precautions. These men are doing it right. They're spreading the tent floor with plenty of straw. It helps to layer pine branches 20 to 30 centimeters deep beneath the straw. This keeps out the ground cold especially well. Ground cloths and blankets can be spread across the top. A submerged round canopy of plywood sheets. In the center is an oven, around which the men lie basking in the warmth, feet toward the center. This soldier is washing in front of another type of plywood tent. Plywood is light and sturdy, and therefore a handy building material. It insulates very well against the cold. The sheets are tied together by wire or string. The tent's source of heat, the stove or hearth, must be dug in as deeply as possible to warm the tent's floor. Even behind the front, pay attention to camouflage from aircraft. Constructing lodging for the troops behind the front or in rearward areas must be an object of concern for every officer. With every project, the development and final condition of the installation must be considered in advance. The excavation for a log house is dug. The site was surveyed in advance. The ground must be dry, the water level at least 2 meters below the surface. Half-grown trees are especially suitable for posts. Sturdy logs are plentiful in much of the Soviet Union. Here, a cellar of a destroyed house is skillfully incorporated into the construction. Now the unit's tradesmen can show what they can do. Russian prisoners are employed as laborers. Because of the available wood, it's simplest to build lodgings in forests. Moss is good insulation. Straw or hay can fill joints when necessary, but are better used for fodder and bedding. Seams must be carefully and thoroughly filled. Layered beams also protect from shell fragments. Here, an experienced tradesman constructs a durable oven out of bricks. Iron ovens can also be bricked in like this. They retain heat longer. This group of log houses is well camouflaged from aircraft. After a snowfall, nothing can be spotted from above. Comrade Horse also has his warm winter lodging. In this region, less wood is available. Stone construction is necessary. This lodging is quite comfortable. It's especially warm because it's sunk into the ground. Plenty of roofing felt is available. It's carefully unrolled and professionally nailed on. When working, try to walk on the planks so that the roof isn't unnecessarily damaged by shoes. When the layer becomes unsealed, water trickles in and the coziness is over. This simple mechanism cuts grass tiles uniformly. Grass patches make good camouflage in summer and insulation in winter. The Reich Labor Corps has special tools for this. To cut at a uniform depth and to lift the grass tiles, spades are pushed and pulled with the help of ropes. This construction was begun early, so that by winter's onset, everything is safely under cover. This cabin, protected by a wall of grass patches, receives a durable straw roof. Men from Frisia and Lower Saxony up front. They learned this at home. The Russian prisoner is generally a useful woodworker. He's especially good with the axe. Hard frozen ground must be loosened by a pickaxe before driving posts for the foundation. The Todt organization and Russian prisoners build solid, above-ground barracks. Protection from flooding and drifting, as well as channels to divert wastewater, must be secured. The seams are smeared with moist clay. Rafters must be mounted with extra care.
Des Dachstuhls erforderlich.
The planks on the gable side are neatly sawed off. Use caution when rebuilding old Russian houses or using materials from them.
Von Baumaterial aus diesen
The risk of contamination from vermin is great. Everyone can become his own master builder.
Baumeister zu werden.
So here, the salient points are summarized. Consider and determine in advance what should be built.
Werden soll.
Find the most technically suitable terrain, that is, where to build.
Wo gebaut werden soll.
Start with suitable human and material resources, that is, how to build. In building positions and quarters, the soldier's ingenuity will find an abundant field of opportunity. The front soldier will quickly arrange his lodging comfortably to offset hard duty in the icy cold.
In eisiger Kälte.
All officers must devote attention to designing the lodging of their units to be as comfortable as possible,
Entsprechend so wohnlich wie irgend möglich zu gestalten.
to reinforce the health and fitness for duty of the troops.
Truppe zu stärken.
After hard fighting on the front, the German soldier should find days of relaxation here, so that he may hold his own in action.
Seinen Mann stellen zu können.
The town of Dormartka is ordered taken.
Morka ist zu nehmen.
The infantry assembles. Pickets advance beyond the far edge of the forest. The subordinated heavy weapons go into position to support the attack. The infantry gains as much ground as possible so as not to lose contact with the faster tanks during the decisive breakthrough into the town. It would be wrong for the armor to move at the slower tempo of the infantry. An MG secures the wood's edge. The company chief briefs the platoon leaders. In the hard-frozen ground, dig abutments for the gun's spurs.
Der Geschütze ausgehoben werden.
The artillery opens fire against enemy field positions and later shifts aim onto the town. Heavy infantry weapons go into position. The infantry starts the attack. At greater distance, the terrain is best utilized in single file. Enemy fire now forces us into skirmishing order. The infantry works its way as closely as possible to the objective.
An das Angriffsziel heran.
Supported by heavy and light infantry weapons, the first squads penetrate a weakly fortified forward position. An enemy light gun fires point blank at the advancing infantry. With the flat trajectory of this gun, the infantry must learn to instantly take cover to escape its effect. After reaching the ordered site, the infantry commander signals the tanks to move up.
Dem Befehl zum Antreten.
From their assembly area, the tanks attack the town, vigorously supported by the artillery. A thrust by light enemy combat vehicles is repulsed by armor, anti-tank guns, and self-propelled 2-centimeter anti-aircraft guns. The infantry assault troops, briefly taking cover from the enemy tanks, again move forward against the town. For street fighting, the infantry commander is assigned flamethrowers. Here are mounted panzer grenadiers. The tank's combined fire pins down the enemy along the town's edge. Exploiting this fire, other tanks thrust against the town's flank. The infantry, somewhat removed from the armored attack, must immediately close up, but without taking cover clustered behind the tanks. Otherwise, they expose themselves needlessly to enemy fire directed at our armor. Therefore, fan out, deeply echeloned. Keep the heavy weapons close at hand. From two sides, infantry and armor grip Dermartka in their steel embrace. The climax of the battle. The first foes leave their foxholes. Changing position forward. Tanks mingled with armored personnel carriers break into the town. Our armor gives dismounted panzer grenadiers fire cover. Russian artillery tries to screen the town's outskirts. Artillery elements follow close behind, and individual guns knock out enemy pockets of resistance with point-blank fire. Heavy infantry weapons fire on the breakthrough point. The armored spearhead pushes into the burning town. Panzer grenadiers fight mounted or dismounted, especially against enemy close-in combatants. An MG fires at close range at enemy snipers. Ever decisive is the quick resolve of the individual fighting man and his readiness to fire instantly. Avoid clearings. Save them for our own MGs. The enemy often lets the first weak forces pass, then goes to work with telling effect. Don't move forward recklessly. Comb the town a section at a time. The light mortar is a superb weapon in street fighting. Use buildings to take cover from its fragmentation. The infantry quickly uses the fire of our own mortars to rush forward. Other squads provide cover fire. Magically, even in modern war, the individual shot is decisive. Tanks and riflemen thrust along a street right to the opposite end of the town. Watching the buildings closely, the infantry moves along both sides of the street. Search every house thoroughly but cautiously. Watch carefully for hidden explosives. Keep squads firmly together. Prisoners must be carefully searched for weapons. Search every house, shed, and loft. Hiding enemy squads remain behind and combat our supply troops for days. A captured officer should be interrogated. Townspeople provide information. The tanks immediately pursue the enemy. Armored cars reconnoiter in advance. The infantry can also grant itself no rest. The enemy must be prevented from digging in anew and fortifying. In summer and winter, push on to the enemy. The arrival of the frost period requires special measures to protect bridges. With pontoon bridges, the proximity of the pontoon must be kept ice-free. Beyond the base-level anchorage, the overhead support system can be clearly seen. It hooks to the anchor line at the base and secures it to the opposite side. Where frequently used trails lead over ice fields, sprinkle sand and mark the way with stakes. Out of enemy range, move across larger ice surfaces with the sail sled. Sufficiently thick ice can bear much weight. Even railroads can be built across. When it's necessary to reinforce the ice, it's best to cut ice blocks for an embankment. To increase the load bearing, place logs over the ice, then lay ties and rails on the top. When the thaw and with it the ice floes come, all bridges are in danger. Don't rely on the icebreakers around the supports alone. With lesser ice floes, poles suffice to keep the ice moving. A greater jam of ice, the so-called pack ice, must be prevented through demolition. It's best to place the charge under the ice. Assault boats fitted at the waterline with sheet metal maintain contact between both banks. A cable line also provides good service. The defensive battle in winter demands the greatest exertions from the troops. Every officer, NCO, and man must be infused with the iron will to hold his position to the last. The officers are the backbone of resistance. They are responsible for the combat readiness of their defense zones. Here, a platoon leader inspects his platoon's position. He gives instructions for reinforcing the position, talks with his men, and encourages them where necessary. He uses every opportunity to round out his picture of the enemy. He's identified greater enemy movement than in recent days. He reports to his company commander the latest results of watching the enemy. The report is relayed to the battalion command post. The battalion adjutant receives the report. A scout troop is sent out to further reconnoiter the enemy. The scout troop leader repeats the assignment. Since enemy contact must be anticipated in low visibility terrain, the scout troop is a full-strength squad. Throughout the sector, increased readiness is ordered. Every officer and NCO once more impresses on their men their jobs. Meanwhile, the scout troop works its way toward the enemy. Before leaving the forest, it has improvised camouflage. The enemy prepares to attack and sends pickets forward. The scout troop spots the enemy assembly position. After a short firefight with an enemy unit that unexpectedly appeared, the scout troop turns back. It has fulfilled its mission. The report goes to battalion. A battery's forward observer also spots the enemy assembly area from his post in a tree. The enemy has worked his way through the perimeter's blind spots, partially up to the wire obstacle.
Alarm!
Weapons are ready to fire. Hand grenades within reach. Now let the enemy come. Heavy MGs have especially good firepower. Like here, they're often emplaced right in the front line. They've opened fire at long range. In other sectors, the troops are also alarmed. In light snow, the enemy can attack without special equipment. Snowsuits improve camouflage. Light MGs open fire. Even in deep snow, attacks can take place. Here, the enemy attacks with ski troops. They especially exploit blind areas in the terrain. Where the enemy can use cover to approach and flat trajectory weapons aren't effective, the mortar is employed with success. The enemy is taken under intensifying fire from all weapons. The enemy frequently attacks with armored support. Tank alarm. It's relayed through all available channels. Anti-tank weapons go into position. The battalion commander arrives at the front trenches to personally conduct the defense. The artillery engages identified assembly areas of enemy armor, approaching tanks, and the accompanying infantry. Tanks can also be outfitted with flamethrowers. The defender should not be stunned by this. Through well-aimed artillery fire or anti-tank guns or in close combat, they can always be destroyed by cold-blooded soldiers. In poor visibility terrain, the enemy sometimes manages to get right up to our position. All weapons take the closest, hence most dangerous enemy under fire. Where the enemy attacks with armored support, separate the infantry from the tanks. Enemy armor is engaged by anti-tank or other guns using open sights. Enemy infantry is the main target of the MG. Here, the enemy has reached the wire obstacle. Against him, the hand grenade is the best weapon. All weapons work together to destroy the enemy with their fire. Should the enemy manage to break into our main defensive zone, the place must be sealed off and a counterattack launched before he has time to arrange it for defense. When possible, the immediate counterattacks are supported by heavy weapons fire. At best, counterattack in the flank, skillfully exploiting terrain and supported by heavy weapons. A combat group has penetrated the village. The place is swept of the enemy. After its capture, the village is immediately prepared to ward off renewed enemy attacks. The German soldier stands ready on defense. The winter in the East places unusual demands on our soldiers. It's not just the change in weather that the Eastern warrior must contend with. Roads and impassable terrain keep him busier. The summer searing heat and dust already have gnawed at the men and material. But the cold season, at 20 or more below freezing, places extraordinary demands on the soldiers and equipment. Before the Siberian cold sets in, Soviet roads transform into mud tracks. Vehicles in the columns often sink to the axles. But the driver's skills, well-maintained machines, and not the least, the soldier's iron will overcome these hardships, especially when supplying the combat troops. The cold has set in overnight. Winter is here. Vehicles that couldn't be moved from the soft ground in time are stuck fast. They have to be freed and the material recovered. The TOT organization is engaged here. Wheels have gradually worn deep furrows in the ground. Frozen hard, they endanger the vehicles. In unusually serious spots, it's better to fill the ruts with sand. Dig out frozen vehicles carefully. Here, a winch raises a vehicle. Twigs, limbs, or planks are put down for the rear wheels to grip. If the vehicle still can't free itself, the tractor comes to the rescue. The first snowfall, it becomes ever harder to move forward. No matter, it must be overcome. Roads and trails worsen. Log roads are built. To protect rolling material, grooves between the logs are filled with earth. It's much colder, so the troops receive additional clothing. Here, vehicles are painted white. They'll be harder to spot at a distance. Ragged, much-used stretches are strewn with straw or sand. This mollifies the risk of skidding for tracked or wheeled vehicles. To protect from drifting, snow fences are erected. The soldier in the east keeps his weapon close to ward off partisan ambushes or air attacks.
Oder gegen Luftangriffe.
The bitter cold causes the issuing of goggles, felt boots, and coats. Here, horses stand exposed to the cold. Their masters are poor caretakers. A combat-damaged vehicle had to be abandoned.
Stehen gelassen werden.
Overnight, the interior filled with snow. The fine powder penetrated every crack. In such temperatures, the physical cleanliness and toughening of the drivers must be considered. A sauna bath makes each a new man. When the linkage is frozen, it must be thawed carefully. The motor should then be cranked by hand. A truck with good gripping cross-country tires tows this stuck vehicle. Traction improves with tire chains. Their positioning should be checked periodically. This cannon, being moved to the front, is made mobile again. The soldier on recon has it really hard. He must often advance in deep snow without proper equipment. Since the weight-bearing surface of the foot is too small, he sinks in. The need for a remedy is urgent. Skis arrive from home. The soldiers grab them right away. Moving forward is now easier. Skilled skiers are needed to master the difficult terrain. Pupils are trained behind the front by experienced skiers. For scout troops, the training has proven its worth. The Akya is a coveted conveyance in both winter and the muddy season. It finds many versatile uses. Even wounded can be evacuated from the front line on it, to be loaded on sleighs in less dangerous zones and taken to the dressing station. Comrade Horse also faces great hardship in morass and snow. With his weight, he sinks easily. Snow-covered roads and trails can't always be cleared quickly enough. The use of all sorts of plows is necessary. Here, snowplows won't work. The buried road must be shoveled clear by people. When clearing paths and roads, remember passing places. In the meantime, April has come. The sun, with its warm rays, increasingly prevails. It begins to thaw. The village roads and paths gradually become mud tracks. This demands timely planning to construct runoff channels for drainage. Supply columns drive on roads that resemble rivers, but they go forward despite everything. On smooth, slippery surfaces, drivers must be especially mindful about skidding. The ground under the mud layer is still frozen hard. This can be disastrous for axles. In this sea of mud, the Russians' wretched huts and towns may appear gloomier than they really are. Thus are all forces mobilized to overcome the hardships that confront the Eastern warrior in the winter and spring, in the countryside and on the road.